Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon and good evening, and welcome to this special panel from the Berghoff Foundation on a discussion to celebrate this year's International Women's Day, which happens to be on a Saturday. International Women's Day is a moment of celebration, but we mustn't forget that it's also a call to action. Perhaps today more than ever. Somehow, fighting for women's rights have now become subversive. Across the world, we know that women are at the forefront of peace building and conflict resolution, and still they remain totally underrepresented in any formal processes. And what we want to do today here with you is to shine a light on their contributions, their struggles, and most importantly, their resilience. This year, we're not only celebrating International Women's Day, but we're also highlighting the significance of Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security, because this year is the 25th birthday. We all know it was a landmark resolution that recognized for the first time the critical role that women do play in preventing and resolving conflicts, participating in negotiations, peacekeeping, humanitarian response. We also must remember that this resolution would never, ever have happened had it not been for the participation of women from civil society. Studies show us things. They give us facts, and they show that when women participate in peace processes, agreements are much more likely to last. But beyond the statistics, we also know from experience that women bring unique perspectives. They bridge divides, foster reconciliation, and ensure that peace is not just a piece of paper, but peace is something that's lived. You know, I've met leaders who've told me, also being a Western woman, that fighting for women's rights is a Western imperialist agenda. But I have to say, I can say with confidence that it is not. And it's because whenever I go somewhere, I meet women like you from all over the world who tell me that this is what they fight for. And this is where we can help and support as well. So what are we seeing today? We're seeing that 25 years of WPS have taken us only so far. We see that despite the invaluable role that women peacebuilders play, they continue to face systemic barriers. There's still a lack of representation, both at formal and informal negotiation tables. We see that women still face gender-specific security threats and discrimination. But how can we change this, and what must be done to ensure that women are not only included, but that their agenda or their voices or their actions are central to any peace effort? Today, we have the privilege of hearing from three remarkable women, Abir, Lantana, and Michelle. They have respectively been leading both peace and mediation efforts in very different contexts, but they also share a lot. And today we are hoping that each of them will bring us unique insights from their work. I want to ask you something. As we together engage in this discussion today, I want you to reflect on how we collectively can push for more inclusive and sustainable peace. The question isn't just what are the challenges we face, but that how we together can drive meaningful change. And with this, I hand over to my dear colleague, Carla, who will moderate this session. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you so much, Chris. A very warm welcome also from my side. My name is Carla Schrammel. I'm advisor on mediation and negotiation support at the Berghoff Foundation, and it's a real pleasure to have you here as we are coming together to celebrate the International Women's Day. Currently, we are witnessing a shift towards more conservative and right-wing politics and governments, not only in Germany, but within Europe and across the world. With this shift, we are also observing and seeing a backlash against inclusion, diversity, and gender equality. And this is having concrete impacts, such as, for example, cuts on funding. At the same time, in peace mediation and peacemaking, we see more pragmatic and less transformative approaches, which are leaving less room for the inclusion of diverse voices. In light of these challenges, today we want to celebrate, as Chris already said, the invaluable contributions of women to peace and peace-building efforts and acknowledge their tireless efforts and work towards creating a more peaceful world. We will explore the unique entry points and leverages of women inside the mediators and peace builders. We will also explore and discuss the challenges which are related to gender dynamics. And we will hear from them how we can support them and how we can support them in their work. And as Chris already said, how we can collectively drive and push for meaningful change. We are especially proud to have gathered such a diverse group of women peace builders and insider mediators from a variety of different conflict-affected contexts. You as women, you're bringing a wealth of experiences, working across different profiles and institutions. We are also truly honored to host such an engaging panel, and we especially appreciate those of you who are participating here in the panel discussion while observing the practices of fasting during Ramadan and the associated ritual of breaking fast. So with this in mind, we will also in particular be conscious of time and respect your schedules. The panel and the discussion will last for 75 minutes, and we will have questions at the end and time for questions at the end. Please feel free to submit the questions via the chat. And while we might not be able to address all of the questions, we are trying to make an effort in order to select those which are most relevant to the audience. With this, I'm already very happy to turn to my first speaker, who is Abir Haji Ibrahim. Abir, you are a co-founder and executive manager of a civic training company called Mubaderun, and you're providing training to peace activists. With this organization, you won a Peace Award, the Livia Prize in 2014, and you personally, you have been a finalist for the 2023 Women Peace Building Award, which has been awarded by USIP. And what I find also in particular interesting, Abir, is that before you founded Mubaderun, you used to work in the oil and business sector within Syria. And given like the current changes in Syria, I wanted to ask you, Abir, to start our conversation, how you assess the situation, the current situation in Syria, and how you assess, even more importantly, the role that women can play in future processes related to reconciliation and peace. Thank you, Abir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Berghoff, to inviting me to such a panelist, a great woman as usual. Actually, as you all heard, that there was like this sudden change in the Syria context in the 8th of December 2024, where we have terminated the Assad regime, and we have started a new chapter, hopefully for the free Syria in the next years. It was a little bit challenging at the beginning, and it was like you have a full emotion of happiness, success, ambitious, looking to the future, and then you suddenly think, oh, but now we we don't know how to do it, you know. Yeah, we've been under this regime for 57 years or something like that. Me myself, I never been to any election box. I never practiced any kind of elections, democracy. For the whole time, we've been doing local mediation in lots of areas inside Syria, and this is what I have been doing with my colleagues in Mubadirun. So we led a widespread community dialogue mediation, and we did it horizontally and vertically. Even we did lots of track 2 mediation during the last 13 years of conflict in Syria. And when the time zero, we say, came in the in December, we said to ourselves that now the peace builders need to move more faster, because Syria has been a very fragmented country. We have a wide, diverse groups, and we don't know how this is going to be reflected on reality as a governance, as a politics, as a power sharing processes. So we thought that we need to have a direct interventions, and this is exactly what the Syrian women peace builders did. In the last 3 months, we've been engaged in all local mediation between communities, especially the communities where the conflict is very high and the tension is very high. We came directly. I came back to Syria after 13 years of being out in Lebanon. I couldn't enter. So once the liberation of Syria happened, I went directly, and we started our work on the local level with the communities who have a very high tension, especially when it comes from different sects, Alawite, Sunnis, and the whole conflict, which already started 13 years ago. There were a brave woman in the nights of the falling of Assad regime. They literally spoke with most of the people that they know, asking them to leave the weapon, to do settlement, to not fight, to not open a fire against each other. And it happened in so many villages inside the country. What you are hearing in the media is not what is on reality. On reality, we have a huge tension and we have a conflict. We need to do a lot of conflict prevention, and that role was given to the women, to the Syrian women in particular, because once the men are in power, everyone looks about that chair where the power is. But on the local community and on the villages and what might happen, it's always the woman who comes first and to do the work. And I do remember that I was talking to each one, and I was asking each one from my colleague in the Syrian civil society, from men, to help, to support, to start any kind of support to have a conflict prevention in some areas. So it was like a chaos, but now we know that we need to start our national dialogue. We already did the conference, actually, but the conference is not the beginning and it is not the end. So we did before that the community dialogues in all level, and we did lots of consultation with community leaders, and then there was the national conference, and we will continue the community dialogue, especially when it comes to social reconciliation, which is basically dealing with the past, dealing with our grievances, dealing with our trauma, thinking about the future, and finding ways for women political participation. In the conference and in all this process, in the conference, the women were representative. I do found a lot of my colleagues in the women. Maybe it is not the ambitious, maybe we did not reach the 35 quota, but at least there were women who were in the preparation committee, who were in the facilitation for groups, and who participated in the conferences. But now, most of our colleagues on the ground are working on community dialogues.
Thank you so much, Abir. I think this was very interesting and also encouraging to hear that women in Syria have such an important role, in particular in preventing and settling local conflicts, but also in the national dialogue. So with that, and I think we will also have time to come later on, Abir, again, back to the role of women in Syria and elsewhere in formal processes. But before that, I would like to call in our next speaker, Lantana Baku Abdullahi. She is the national co-coordinator of the Nigerian Women Mediators Network and leads the organization Women for Positive Peacebuilding Initiative. Lantana, you have been participating in a variety of different efforts locally and regionally in settling violent conflicts. And you also served as a lead mentor with UN Women towards increasing the participation of women in leadership and decision-making processes. Given your vast experiences in working on conflicts, mediating conflicts, in particular in the central and northern region of Nigeria, I wanted to ask you, Lantana, what have been within these processes? What have been your unique entry points and unique leverages in these conflicts as a woman inside a mediator? Thank you, Lantana.
Thank you so much, Carla, and thank you to all our listeners and people who have had opportunity to join this conversation today. And happy International Women's Day to everyone supporting and amplifying the voices of women globally. I think basically for all of you who are watching today, you have heard I'm from Nigeria, and it's a country that has faced immense, violent conflict ranging from, terrorism to secession, different elements trying to break away from the country. We've had, a lot of other economic kidnappings, banditry, armed banditry, land disputes, so many other challenges that we face over the years. And as women, I think we have had to make the decision whether to continue to serve, to be seen as victims of violent conflict, or whether to become key actors in the process of finding, sustainable solutions and peace into our societies. And over the years, we've had a lot of challenges, and I'm sure it's a global challenges, but very peculiar to each context. In our own context in Nigeria, and for me, coming also from a conservative Northern Muslim communities, I would say we have not had it good. Culturally, I would say women are viewed with some certain level of respect, certain level of empathy. But I think where does this respect ends? I think we are seen more as homemakers. In our homes, we play some vital roles in terms of, upbringing of our children, in terms of shaping the moral values of the community entirely. And I think that's where the bulk, ends. We are not seen when we are talking about the hard issues. So women are basically known to deal with the soft issues, bringing up the children, keeping the home, together, making sure everyone is well fed. But when we come to the concrete issues, even though we say women face the brunt of violent conflict, we don't see ourselves there. So we've had to fight to actually get a space on the table. Of course, we are not where we want to be, but I think that we are gaining grounds based on the fact that we've had to prove ourselves that we have what it takes to contribute to the peace processes and the entire development of our society. So basically, being the weaker sex is basically our definition, like I said. But I think we've taken the opportunity to showcase our skills, and we've had to prove that over the time in terms of our engagement with communities. And I always tell women when I engage with them, when I do any programming with women, I tell them, if a man has to do it once, a woman has to prove herself twice. So we have to double the work that normally it is done one time by a man, just to prove that we are capable of contributing to the peace of our society. So that's an entry point that we've always showcased, that women, we have to come to the table, not just to serve tea, but to contribute to the conversations. I've been to meetings, to dialogues, to mediation where women will keep quiet. And I will tell them, no, this is an opportunity to show that you have something to say, something to contribute to a process. And that's the only reason why you will be called back to that table. So these are cases, opportunities we've taken to prove that we are worth being on the table, to making sure we contribute. Another opportunity that has also worked for us is the fact that a lot of the conflicts that happen in our society are unfortunately perpetrated most likely by men. And so when women come to the table, we are seen as non-threatening. They know we don't cause the war, we don't cause the conflict. We're only here because we are disturbed or we are victims of the situation and we want to bring change. So that perspective of being non-threatening, when we bring men together, they know that we are not going to fight them, we are not going to cause more injury or we are also going to respect the principles of do no harm. So that opportunity, we've also utilized it. I always give the example of one of our colleagues, Hamsatu, who at a point at the height of the Boko Haram crisis will be called by Boko Haram to tell them, this is the situation and we want you to mediate in this situation in terms of release of prisoners, exchange of prisoners or passage for, food and non-food items and so many other things. So that's the kind of opportunities that we've leveraged being a woman, the fact that we are not threatening, we are not part of the conflict, it has also worked for us. The fact that we also live in really deeply culturally, religious, sensitive communities, we've also used the opportunity of making sure we are sensitive to those cultures, to those religious practices, and the values that they hold there. For example, one of the key, entry points that we've leveraged over the years is the fact that we operate in a religiously divided, society in Nigeria, where there's always been tension between Muslims and Christians, or violence, between Muslims and Christians. So what we do is we've formed over time, as one of our important entry point, an interfaith women or mediation team, whether male or female. We make sure that we present a joint interfaith group as mediators to be able to have ease of doing business with such affected communities. And that has really paved way for us in most of the communities that we've come across. Another opportunity that we've also leveraged upon is the fact that as women, we have seen that it is so easy to have access to conservative communities. There are communities that do not ordinarily allow other people, especially males, to access their communities or to talk to their women or to talk to their children or to talk to their young people. As women, we've seen that as an important entry point, and we've really taken that as a way to be able to really deeply enter into most communities and reach as many women as possible who can be able to contribute, to the peace processes in the communities that we work in. Thank you, Carla.
Thank you so much, Lantana. I think this was very interesting, as often and always. And I think in particular, I like that you became very concrete in saying what is sometimes the specific leverage and entry point women have, being, for example, not perceived as less threatening and not being seen as a main actor in the conflict, and as somebody who will or wants and who can also bring change. Thank you very much. And I think we'll also have time to hear a bit more from you later on, and maybe also how you dealt with the challenges, which sometimes are also related to gender dynamics. But now I'm very happy to turn to our third speaker, Councillor Dioniso Michelle Murinda. And Michelle is a councillor in the Chikutu Rural District Council in the northwest of Zimbabwe. She's also a mediator who participated in various conflict prevention and peace building processes, and she is a member of FemWise Africa and the co-chair of African Women Leaders Network in Zimbabwe. A very warm welcome to you, Michelle. And since you also have been involved in different, as we already said, peace building and mediation efforts, and you're an experienced mediator, I wanted to ask you what have been the gender dynamics at play when you have been contributing to the transformation of these conflicts, and maybe you can also mention one concrete example you were involved in. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carla. Salutations of the day to you all. Allow me to stand on already established protocol. Thank you for the question. The intersection of gender, mining, and land use conflicts presents a complex dynamic in Zimbabwe, particularly in rural districts like where I come from, Chegutu. Women in these areas where they are farmers, whether they are farmers, miners, or general community members, often face structural and cultural barriers that exacerbate their vulnerability in conflicts. And you find that, the district I'm coming from is rich in natural resources. So mining is a major activity as well as farming. We have actually been contributing a very big percentage to the national GDP in terms of agricultural produce as well as natural resources, be it gold or platinum and other minerals as well. So the gendered impact of mining conflicts, we see that women farmers have been disproportionately affected when land disputes arise between miners and farmers, and women farmers have been bearing the brunt of displacement, loss of livelihoods, and environmental degradation. Many rely on subsistence farming to feed their families, and when mining encroaches on their land, they are left economically vulnerable. And we see that women have generally been excluded from most of the mining opportunities because traditionally Zimbabwean culture has prohibited women from working in mines due to myths that women bring bad luck and that minerals will not be found in their presence. These deep-seated cultural beliefs have reinforced gendered economic inequalities in the mining sector. However, efforts have been ongoing, particularly at policy level, to ensure that there is equality in terms of gender and opportunities for women as well in the sector, but a lot still needs to be done. And we see women in mining continuously facing harassment and marginalization. And women who break cultural norms and engage in mining seem to face intimidation and gender-based violence, as well as exclusion from mining syndicates, which are predominantly controlled by men. So my intervention and its impact with regards to this environment I'm operating in, I have been challenging cultural norms because I am a counselor. I have strategic entry point where I am a government official and can access any space. Moreover, I also come from this same rural area. So the people know me, they've seen me grow, and I have gained credibility, which any other person coming from a different area might not have, because they value what I say, because they know that my interests are most likely genuine because I am a part of the community. In my mediation work, I have challenged these mystical norms that exclude women from mining by advocating for gender inclusivity. I have actually facilitated dialogues where women miners have been recognized as legitimate stakeholders in resource conflicts. I have been empowering women through mediation and ensuring that women, both farmers and miners, have a voice in negotiation processes, and this has included capacity building workshops to equip women with negotiation skills and mediation techniques. I have also been doing my best to secure gender-sensitive agreements through my mediation efforts and through my office as chairperson of the Environment Committee, which deals with all natural resources as well as agricultural and environmental governance. And I have managed to come up with resolutions which have incorporated gender-responsive solutions, such as ensuring women farmers having access to alternate farming land, and that women miners have been given a fair share in mining operations. The gender dynamics in these conflicts go beyond economic interest, and they are deeply tied to cultural perceptions. But my work has been about awakening these traditional norms and engaging traditional leaders and advocating for an inclusive approach that balances economic development with gender equity as well as social justice. So I am bringing all actors capitalizing on my office, from the police, the government side, the traditional leaders, the actors themselves, and this has actually been very fruitful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I in particular found interesting that you were explaining very concretely how your entry points to specific processes, also related to the transformation of conflict, are not only defined by your gender, but also by your origin and by having been risen up within the community and thereby gaining legitimacy. I think this is a very important point which needed to be added to the discussion. And I think it's also a very nice transition, you explaining a bit and the sometimes challenging parts related to gender dynamics. When we now go back to Lantana and ask her, since you, Lantana, you also have been exposed to more challenging gender dynamics, right? And I think you already started to explore this a bit in your first intervention, but we would be very curious to hear what your strategies were when, as a experienced women insider mediators, when dealing with these challenges in the mediation of conflicts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kala. And of course, our listeners and those who are watching us. I think it is no gainsaying to the fact that we continue to face discrimination and indeed marginalization in terms of our peace work. But we are also proud of the modest progress we've made over time in terms of our contributions to peace and sustainable and security in our various contexts. Like I did mention, some of the examples of the words or comments I've had from male is that we are not taken seriously because we don't know how to keep confidential information. We cannot be trusted with leadership because we are very weak. We are too emotional. Sometimes when we are faced with hard issues, we can break down, and we can also be used as because of how we can easily fall for the opposite gender. We can be used as informants, for the enemy camp. So we've had so many of such information that ordinarily will have broken us, but I think it has opened our ways to some of the way the male the men view us, and we've taken down and turned them into lemonade, let me say. And so we've deployed a number of strategies over the years, and depending on the context and also the conflict, we've had to change over time. Just to summarize, in terms of the different kind of strategies we've been able to deploy. And I think one of the things is the recognition that we are not here to take over from men. I think especially in the kind of context that we work in, there's always this fear of, women are coming over to take charge, to throw us off, the ship. Women are here to talk about feminism. They are talking about gender. So there's a lot of misconception about what feminism and gender is all about. So we've all recognized those challenges, and we've actually tried to know and to actually very concretely inform them that the work we are doing is to complement each other. It is not to displace either of us. We are all partners in this process, and we must work together. When violence happens or when conflict happens, it doesn't just affect men, it also affects women, and sometimes it affects more women than men. So we've actually been able to lay the fact that we have men as our partners. We also have used other strategies such as shadowing male mediators. So when we have male mediators, going for a mission, we'll tell them we'll just accompany you to just serve as observants. So in the earlier stages, I think most of the times that's the approach we took to be able to really get deeply immersed, in mediation processes, working with men, accompanying them, supporting them, providing all the necessary administrative support they need, but just so that we have a space within the team to learn, to accompany, to understand, and to also gain trust, and be able to do this work. One of the other things is we've also realized, like we do mention, there's a very limited number of women in mediation processes. And what can we do? Even in our local communities, in our local conflict, we have recognized the fact that skills building is a critical component of the kind of work we do. How many are we? How many can we empower? The more women we have, the better we are able to channel those and harness those resources towards making sure we promote a culture of, inclusive peace processes. Another opportunity we do is to create networking opportunities. No woman can do it alone. We have recognized that. I, Lantana, because I lead a local organization, I sometimes cannot be able to do a very important work on, be able to cover so many, areas. So what we do is to create networking opportunities, making sure we have women, we have a national network, we have regional networks. For example, I belong to the national network. I also belong to the regional network, which is the FemWise in West Africa. We have FemWise in Africa. We have Commonwealth at the continental level. We have the Global Alliance. These are all structures that support our work and making sure that we leverage these opportunities to increase the spaces for women in peace processes. Another opportunity we do is, making sure that we prove that women can do it. And how do we do that? In many instances, especially in our context in Nigeria, we've had issues where there's a violent conflict and we want to intervene, and we'll tell them we are sending a female-only mediation team. No man, just female. And that is to prove a point and making sure that those women who go there know what they are doing. They are technically sound and they can be able to lead such processes. We are doing that to be able to showcase to our community stakeholders that if given the opportunities, women can actually do it. And they have seen the value in that. We've gone to one community where we sent a female-only mediation team, and the leaders were like, we are covering our faces in shame. If women can come here and lead these kind of processes, we need to do better. We need to make sure that we live in a peaceful community. And that was an important message that we use that opportunity to send. And shall I go on? I have just 2 comments to make.
Okay, very shortly, because I think we also need to. Yeah.
And I think one other thing we do is, because a lot of the time, women's marginalization comes through the face of religion. So a lot of the time, they use religion to say, well, in Islam or in Christianity, women are not supposed to do this, or women are not supposed to do that. So we've found, scholars who are able to work with us to be able to interpret what our holy books are saying regarding the spaces for women and the role of women in those, religious practices. And lastly, I think it has to do with policy formation. We've influenced a lot of policy formation. There are community or states, governments, state government that work with us and say, yeah, we want to see the domestication of the National Action Plan, that's UN Resolution 1325, or we want to see the development of a women, peace and security policy. But there are some states where we have had to tweak those policies to suit the kind of conservativeness of those societies. For example, there are states that will not allow you to mention anything gender. So what do? We have to say, okay, we want a gender equity law. Just so that we are getting somewhere, we are making progress. There are states that will tell you, we don't want to hear anything about child rights law.
Thank you, Lantana. I think this was very rich, actually, right? I think in particular, I like all these different and very concrete strategies how to deal with more challenging gender dynamics. And you mentioned, I think, concrete examples such as shadowing male mediators, but also creating networks and having female exclusive mediation teams. I think these are all concrete recommendations, and they might already also reply to some of the questions in the chat where somebody asks what you all would advise to Ethiopian women in relation to enhancing the traditional role of women in conflict resolution and peace building. And I think this is actually already like a quite concrete answer to that. And with that, thank you very much. I would like to call in Abir again. And as I said, I would very much interested to hear also what you think, Abir, how we can strengthen the access of women peace builders and insider mediators to formal peace processes. But if you have additions to what we have now been discussing with Lantana and Michelle, like how to deal with difficult gender dynamics, please feel free to add on this. Thank you, Abir.
Yes, thank you. Why we should be in the peace processes from the first place? We know the answers as women. All of us know it, but actually, the men does not know it so far, or does not believe that these causes are our intention to be engaged in peace processes. So we need to have like a wide we need to have a wide education all the time that our way to peace processes is not to share power, is not only to put the men aside, as much as it's a prevention for getting involved into more conflict, into excluding agreements for some sects or some ethnic group in the country. So we need all the time to start to speak why we are doing that and what are the causes. Based on what? The research that already done on peace processes and the role of women of engaging in peace processes is very important. But still, sometimes and this is when it comes to the Middle East, in particular, when you come in a mediation for peace process from the Western community, like Chris said, and you say to the people, to the Syrians, for example, you need to include women. You need to include women. But the Syrian does not feel why they should include women. So for that reason, it is not only imposing agendas for women engagement in peace processes as much as it's bottom-up approach with the women themselves. So we need to, before we engage women in peace processes, we need to have the right protection for her work, for her safety, for the great things that she's doing on the ground. We need to have another layer of empowerment, how to be engaged. So in our country, things, once it comes from outside, there will be a lot of people pushing it. But when it comes from us as a nation, as a Syrian woman from inside, the doors are open more easily. So most of the time, doors are blocked when it comes from internationals, and doors are open when it comes from national level. So for that reason, we hold our responsibility. And we need to be responsible enough to put our finger or ourselves in each platform that is going to any kind of peace process. It is not easy. In the Syria context, the Women Advisory Board, which is board, the Office of Special Envoy made them as a advisory panel. It was an excellent idea. Actually, it was really an excellent idea. But imagine that in these times, and when after the falling of Assad regime, none of the ladies who were in the Women Advisory Board were engaged in the national dialogue. It's a pity, because we lost all the experiences that they had with the Office of Special Envoys, and there are now other women. Only one or two actually were engaged, but still we have like 28 or 25 women who were engaged in the peace process from the beginning of the Syria crisis. We saw only 1 or 2 women are engaged in the national dialogue, and all the others are new. For that reason, I'm saying that it's not only the international agenda. It must have like a support from the women inside, so they can build their profile up to the peace agreement and peace processes. The financial support for their institution is essential, because once they are empowered, they have the community power, and the community bring them up as well. They do say that these group of women, these are the peace builders who helped us in the crisis, because they have enough resources, they have the good knowledge of mediation, they did conflict prevention, and even they did sometimes humanitarian relief. They represent us, and they need to be up in higher level, in track 1 level. So it's always thinking about how we as a woman from inside the community leverage our existence to the peace processes with a soft empowering from the international. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abir. I think this is very important to stress, that it's not only about like bringing women into formal peace processes, but it's very much about like, how do we do this? And you are saying like this should be, and very much I agree to this very much. Like it should be like leveraging like the internal resources, and have an incremental, authentic, internal, coherent approach. And I also found it interesting that you're emphasizing this missing continuity also between different formal peace processes, also when it comes to the participation of women. Thank you very much, Abir. Just to mention, I'm very happy to come now again to Michelle, but please already insert your questions into the Q&A chat, which we are closely monitoring, and we are also trying to already, as I did, insert some of the questions that you are having. So my last question to you, Michelle, can you hear us? Like my last question to you, Michelle, also against your vast experiences is, and as I said, we wanted also to hear from you as women insider mediators and peace builders. What are your recommendations and ideas related to the support of women insider mediators, also in order to sustain your efforts? Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Carla. I think some of the most important points have been spoken to by Lantana and Abir, but I would like to reiterate the importance of institutionalization of insider mediation, as well as that women mediators should stop working in silos and bring their efforts together. We also need to understand the context in which we are working in. Our countries are different, and we need to identify with what works in our countries. While we have global best practices, you need to identify what would make you relevant in the very important peace processes that are taking place in your countries. And this institutional recognition and inclusion in formal peace processes is normally done by governments and regional bodies in our different continents. And international organizations should therefore formally recognize women inside the mediators and include them, maybe as a percentage of their delegation in national and regional peace frameworks. Capacity building has already been spoken to, as well as gender-sensitive mediation training. And I would also want, in my context, to talk about the importance of engaging existing mediation and peace structures, for example, traditional and religious leaders. Since many women mediators work in deeply traditional settings, engaging traditional and religious leaders as allies in promoting women's mediation roles is very crucial. And this also speaks to the importance of packaging what we are doing in a manner that is appealing to men and we also need to introspect on what exactly we are calling positive masculinity. Is it just addressing men, or it's actually engaging them in a manner that would actually make them come to our table in the female mediation space? So I also want to talk about the importance of lobbying for legal reform, and this speaks to policy changes where they are necessary so that this formalization process is actually legally recognized. For example, in my work, after I realized the violence that was taking place in the mines, in the communities, in the farming areas, I am the first councillor to establish ward environmental subcommittees, and this has been very sustainable. I am in charge of 29 wards in 4 major constituencies. And these subcommittees have actually been adopted into the council framework of operation. And this has now enabled all actors to be on one table, and it's ensuring sustainability of peace and mediation efforts. You find that many peace agreements fail because they lack local ownership and follow-up mechanisms. And this committee would really be doing this work as a structured framework for monitoring and enforcing mediation outcomes. It's also a platform for continued dialogue, prevention of conflicts, as well as from re-imaging ones, and a local dispute resolution mechanisms. And I think my last point on sustainability and recommendation in the women mediation space, is also for us to be cognizant of contemporary issues that are happening at the global landscape. Well, I don't know about other regions, but in Africa, we have really felt the impact of the US withdrawal of funding, not just to Zimbabwe, but to other countries. And you know, the US has historically been one of the largest funders of development programs globally. And this has also been including some mediation work. And this has a very big gendered impact in women's organizations. And already in Zimbabwe, we are seeing the closure of some women organizations, including those that have been working in mediation. And we are now anticipating a rise in a new HIV infections because of the withdrawal of support with regarding to this health sector, and increase in GBV, and it's creating a COVID-like effect where the surge of gender-based violence is rising. The women mediators themselves, the women leaders, are actually no longer going to work because they've closed, and the people that they've been helping are now at a loss. So you find that we need to really find sustainable ways of adjusting to this new reality, and how we can pull resources together in order to sustain the work that we have been doing. Otherwise, we risk losing all the great work we have been doing over the past 40 years, and we should really have this conscious and deliberate conversation in our various countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you for sharing your ideas how women insider mediators and peace builders should be supported. And thank you also like to relate to the very current challenges coming also with the change in US administration. We now have some questions from the chat, and they are partly quite concretely addressed to some of you. So there is one question to you, Abir, asking about what initiatives or projects have been seen successful in building trust between different ethnic groups in Syria. Maybe you can speak to that. There's also generally like the comment, and all of you can say or comment on this, or the question, if, now I don't see it again, but if women are always like the victims, I think this is a bit a misunderstanding which should be maybe clarified again. And there's also the question of what role do men play in the progress of empowering women? Maybe I think Lantana and others already have referred to that, but maybe you want to relate to this again, and the others can also say something about this, like the role of man in the process of empowering women. Yeah, and there is, I think, in particular, in greetings to the very strong Cameroon Women Peace Convention, greetings to Sono Susevo. They are sharing their experiences, how they did it in Cameroon, and maybe you can have later on a look into the chat. Yeah. So the question to you, Abir, right? How to build trust between different ethnic groups, and also the question, are women always victims? Just to clarify this misunderstanding. And then also the question again to the role of man. Maybe you want to start, Abir, since you were addressed directly.
Yes, yes. There is plenty of initiatives actually, and without this initiative, things will be much more worse in Syria, because we have so much diversity in as ethnic groups, as religious, and even inside each, the Muslims itself that has 3 or 4 sects. So the initiative were started, and the thing in Syria, which I don't know if it's in another conflict, that from day one, or you can say after 1 month of the revolution, and then we moved, there was like arming group, and there was the revolution fighting against the regime. From that day, the initiative of opening dialogue and speaking about how we could build trust among ethnic groups started. So the dialogue for getting know each other, it started under the bombing. So we did not wait until everything finished and there's like a settlement, or like it's happened now. So it's very important first to start from day one. Once you have a conflict once you feel that there is a conflict raising up in a way or another, start the dialogue immediately. And then, because it is a diversity in ethics and religious groups, I think the best option is to start talking about identity, belonging, and the culture. So you bring the culture aspect as a common ground, because culturally, as a Syrian, we have a commonality. But in terms of our identity and belonging, we have this diversity. Then you bring up also the value of being diverse groups. And you can also we have lots of initiatives, just like I said, this kind of initiatives, and plus in the institution itself, in the civil society organization itself. Once you reflect all the diversity that you could do in the senior level or the voluntary level, you also present a sample to the community that this works and it could happen, and it's bring a success as well. So these two initiatives, we've been, and there was a lot of initiatives. Actually, now it's like I will be mentioning some. There were lots of track 2 initiative. Bergov, they did a very good, excellent initiative on track 2 dialogue, where trust were built among Syrian expertise. Lots of international organization and even Syrian-led. The Syrian Civil Society Rooms is one of the best initiatives, which was led and done with the Office of Special Envoy as well. It's brought a diverse group of Syrians from everywhere to the Geneva, where the peace talks is taking place, and we started to break the barriers and we built the trust among each other. So there is a huge number of initiatives.
Thank you so much, Abir. And I think it was particularly interesting also your insights on like that you should start the dialogue, like not only when the violence has already ceased, but like when violence is still exercised. And also thank you for sharing this. What should be like also the topics, right? And where should you focus on identity and belonging? So maybe Lantana and Michelle, and then we can come back to you. Abir, there are also some more questions in the chat related to Syria. But maybe Lantana and
Okay.
Michelle, you want to come in like on this question. How do you see women and their role and like when it comes to the spectrum of being victim or being also perpetrator, and like the role of man in when it comes like to facilitating the
Yeah.
progress of empowering women.
Thank you
Lantana?
so much. I think I really like the question about victims versus perpetrators for women. I think this is a very critical point, especially because I did mention that most often we are seen as victims, but of course, there have been many, many instances where women have been direct perpetrators of violent conflict. Even in my own context, I've recorded that. For example, there's a community I've got to where they have a dedicated, wallet for contributions to buy arms. And most times it's just the women that keep those wallets, that collect the contributions, and making sure or they keep the weapons for the men. Because most often when there's a raid, they raid the women, they raid men rather than women. So there's been victims. I've also had stories where in one community where I know, where men will cut off, will use machetes, will cut victims, and then go up to the next one because it is a fast, it is a fast-paced, activity. The woman will come and finish off. So we call them the finishers. So definitely they have been perpetrators. But of course, compared to victims and perpetrators, we have more victims and perpetrators. And definitely part of the work we do in terms of access in communities or working with parties to conflict, we do recognize where we place each group. There are victims that we work with, but we also work with perpetrators. But just to emphasize, and I like this, comment that there are perpetrators, and we definitely recognize them, and we also, design interventions that work towards them, because sometimes it is about, community, pressure, they are facing trauma, there's been a lot of challenges. So we also design certain activities tailored towards those categories of, women stakeholders. In terms of the role that men play, I think in terms of conservative communities, like some of us in Africa, we do recognize that we can't do without them. We cannot make progress, meaningful progress. We can make progress, but we cannot make meaningful progress without having, the men stakeholders on our side. And I like how Michelle brought the issue around, traditional stake leaders, rulers, or religious leaders. They are critical components of our society, and we do recognize that we need them. Sometimes, whether in terms of facilitating access, whether in terms of implementing policies, whether in terms of enforcing laws, there are a lot of things that we need the men to be able to really achieve and make progress in our community. So they play significant roles, like I mentioned, in those kind of categories. And we do recognize that in most cases, if we want to make meaningful progress, we need them on our side. And that's why, like I said, we also tailor activities and interventions towards bringing them and recognizing them as male champions for gender equality. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lantana. I think very well done in emphasizing again what you already explained also, or like make more transparent beforehand, like that there's a need for like a complementary approach between men and women. Michelle, do you also want to come in and talk a bit about like how you see like the spectrum between victim and perpetrator when it comes to gender dynamics and gender, and also on this question of what kind of role can men play in the emancipation of women? Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. I think as we are evolving in peace and security, in mediation, in the women's space, we should now begin to also target in courts the perpetrators of violence. And traditionally, men and the society have been seen as the perpetrators of violence against women. You find that all the efforts that has been done globally in countries has been focusing on the victim. The person that has been raped, the person that has been beaten up is the one that is receiving all the attention, they are receiving the counseling. But what about the perpetrator themselves? I think it's high time we also offer rehabilitation to those perpetrators if ever we are hoping to have a transformation in behavioral change, in transformation of conflicts. Because I think for so many years, 30 years now after the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, what progress have we made? Studies have shown that we still need 134 years until gender equality is established. We should honestly look at where we are going wrong, why we are not yet recognized as women. So I think in terms of the dynamics, our focus and our programming should also target those that are not women, the society, the men themselves, and how we are one community, how we are intertwined, how we need each other, and we cannot do without each other. And also, I would like to encourage other mediators to say, yes, we can make noise on social media. Yes, we can make noise on the ground. But to what end? I think maybe as a policymaker, I am now a bit biased. I have noticed that all the noise that we make, all the efforts that we are doing, I believe that it should end in the enaction of laws and in policy formulation so that we sustain the work that we are doing. I don't think it's really sustainable to talk about issues, but then I would ask, and then what? So we need to have certain organizations and certain people in peace and security who would then enact the laws and actually apply the recommendations that we have been coming up with over the years, the adoption of policies, the ratification of global normative frameworks, and etc. That would sustain all the work that have been done before us, that we are doing, and also in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. I think this is very important what you're saying also in respect to how do we institutionalize like the participation of women and make it sustainable. There are two more questions, and as I said, we are trying, or we will be very conscious of time and really stop at 1:15 in order to not hinder anybody, in particular not our speakers, from very relevant rituals these days. So maybe you can quickly answer and share a few thoughts on these two questions. The one question is about the role of, so it's referring to Syria, but I think we can also, the others can also refer to this, like, do women in your context want reconciliation? And what role should women play in reconciliation? This is one question. And the other question is, what are the way forwards to bring women to the forefront of peace-building processes in Africa and Middle East? Yeah, I think all of you already spoke to this, but maybe you have some few more thoughts to share. Who wants to come in first? Maybe Abir, and then we. Yeah, thank you.
Actually, there is no men or women who are with reconciliation than the others in Syria. Most of the people are asking for transitional justice processes to be designed. And the most of the women, which I am working in particular on this file, which is the social reconciliation, but not the social reconciliation for forgiveness, as much as social reconciliation as a preparation phase for transitional justice, because the transitional justice is a wave. One of its components is the social reconciliation. So there is no particular sex or gender in Syria saying that we need to forgive or we need to punish. Everyone wants a very good, well-designed, bottom-up designed transitional justice processes where everyone got their rights and they have the ability to choose either to forgive or to go to the court and execute.
Thank you very much, Abir. I think this was a very strong and clear statement. Lantana, do you want to come into this question of reconciliation? Does it relate to gender? What role should women play? And also this question, if you have to share any further thoughts on how to bring women to the forefront.
I think not to belabor this, comment. I think that has been covered, especially by IBA. There is no reconciliation without, justice, and I think that's the bedrock of sustainable peace. So definitely, inclusive processes must ensure that the voices of women are captured. I just wanted to use my last minute to draw attention to the current realities that we face in terms of the shrinking, donor space, in reality of what is happening across the US and also across the Europe. We cannot continue to talk about women, peace, and security, or in promoting the voices of women, peace builders and mediators, without also recognizing that these are new frontiers of challenges that are emerging. What do we need to do better? Because as it is, even before the withdrawal, or do I say the demolition of USAID and also the current funding cuts from other European countries, we were already in a shrinking space. How do we navigate and come out, with our spaces above the waters? I think that is a question I want to leave today, and I hope that we can begin to have a separate conversation to address these new challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much also for joining the voices Michelle already raised. Michelle, your last few thoughts on the questions.
I think Lantana and Abri have already said almost everything, but I would like to encourage women-led mediation in peace processes, truth-telling and transitional justice, as well as political empowerment of women, so that women can also be partakers of policy formulation, as well as leveraging on international frameworks like the UNSCR 1325. And I'm going to say that women, we are not just victims of conflict and injustice, but we are powerful agents of peace and reconciliation, and we continue to find ways of adjusting to global realities, and together, united, we will definitely achieve much impact. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining our panel discussion and joining the celebration of the International Women's Day by clearly showing how relevant the contributions of women inside the mediators and women peace builders are. Thank you in particular for sharing concrete stories and strategies, how to deal with challenging gender dynamics, but also emphasizing what are the unique entry points and leverages of women within these processes, and emphasizing also, I think this is often a very welcome reminder to also the more external audience and support actors, that it's not only about providing access of women to formal peace processes, but it's very much also about the question how this is shaped. Thank you so much. I would like to end with and actually a title of your country fellow, Lantana, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who wrote a book who said, we should all be feminists. So I think this is true for peace building and peacemaking efforts, but also generally for our lives. So happy International Women's Day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.